All right, this is for Management 341. This is on Chapter 10. The OB screening was Lucy. And this is basically going over for Chapter 10 is on abilities. And basically, this is the opening scene that they have for the movie that I thought would be appropriate to show. The idea, the premise of the movie was what if humans could use more than only 10% of their brain?
Life would be like if we could access, let's say, 20% of our brain's capacity. This first stage would give us access to and control of our own body.
Sir,
Yes.
has it been proved scientifically?
Well, for the moment, it's just hypothesis, I confess. But if you think about it, it's troubling to realize that the Greeks, the Egyptians, and the Indians had notion of cells centuries before the invention of the microscope. And what to say about Darwin, whom everybody took for a fool when he put forth his theory of evolution? It's up to us to push the rules and laws and go from evolution to revolution. 100 billion neurons per human, of which only 15% are activated. There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Sir,
Yes.
and what would be the next stage?
Well, the next stage would probably be control of other people. But for that, we would need to access at least 40% of our brain's capacity. After control of ourselves and others, comes control of matter. But now we're entering into the realm of science fiction, and we don't know any more than the dog who watches the moon.
Excuse me, sir,
Yes.
but what would happen if, for some reason, we ignore somebody unlocked 100% of the cerebral capacity?
100%?
Yes?
I have no idea.
So that kind of starts the movie off. So this is basically going over, chapter 10 is going over abilities. And the type of abilities that we go over in the chapter is cognitive ability, emotional ability, and physical ability. So the factors of ability, one select part of cognitive ability actually is a biological factor, which is brought in the book saying that it is primarily brought during childhood and what happens throughout our lives, which is basically like the quality of education as well as occupation, work performance. So those are kind of the attributes that go into kind of the cognitive ability. The part in the movie that this really shows biologically is not a change in how she's being raised or anything like that. This has to do with what chemical has been introduced into Lucy's system. This is what changes her. This is what gives her the new abilities, not the growth of going through life or change of work or anything like that. going to stop it right there. This is basically showing the whole biological factor that is shown in the movie that, in like I said, it's not like normal, which would happen in an educational sense or a life change or something like that. This is a chemical compound that has been introduced to her system that has now given her new physical abilities to defy the laws of physics. So cognitive abilities, they're pretty much all of these hit in are present in the film, but the most present in the film, I think, is the spatial and the perceptual that are shown greatly in this, as well as a little bit of reasoning as well. Verbal is shown somewhat, but as well, the main I would say is the bottom three, which would be the reasoning, this spatial, as well as the perceptual. And in this next scene, it is shown for the spatial part because in the book it also says for jobs where it is relevant, it would be like pilots, drivers, boat captains, something that involves moving a vehicle.
Do you always drive like that?
I've never driven before.
Great. Hey, that's one way.
We're late.
Hey, I'd rather be late than dead.
We never really die.
So you get the basic idea. This is the short clip that I wanted to show to kind of bring the idea about that, saying that she's never driven before. Most of us have had to go through some kind of education process to learn how to drive a motor vehicle, whereas she was able to, because of the influence of this drug, she was able to learn by visually as well as listening and using her other senses, because she's opened the doors in her brain to basically allow her to learn faster and have a better cognitive ability. And this is just going into some other parts of cognitive, which would be like her reaction time as well as the visual changes that you see during the movie. She's able to look at living organisms as well as matter in the form of, I would have to assume electrons or something like that, but her reaction time is greatly changed throughout the movie, that you can see that she reacts to things a lot quicker, as well as she's already 5 steps ahead of what it seems like 5 steps ahead of everybody else in the movie. Moving on to emotional ability. Emotional ability is, there's 3 major criteria for it. It's the self-awareness, other awareness, and emotional regulation. And for emotional regulation, this is the recovery time that is needed to be taken to get over a certain traumatic or emotional event. And in this upcoming scene, it is not by Lucy, she makes remarks on it, but it is by the villain in here, where he shows his a failure in his emotional regulation.
Learning's always a painful process. Like when you're little and your bones are growing and you ache all over. Can you believe I can remember the sound of my own bones growing? Like this grinding under the skin. Everything's different now. Like, sounds are music that I can understand, like fluids. It's funny, I used to be so concerned with who I was and what I wanted to be, and now that I have access to the furthest reaches of my brain, I see things clearly and realize that what makes us us, it's primitive. They're all obstacles. Does that make any sense? Like this pain you're experiencing, it's blocking you from understanding. All you know now is pain. That's all you know, pain.
Like I said, that's pretty much all I really want to show on that clip. So with that, that is basically she's hitting kind of the three wickets of the self-awareness, others awareness, and emotional regulation. Beginning with emotional regulation, she's basically stating that the villain is all you feel is pain right now, and that is what he's dwelling on, which is blocking his ability to emotionally regulate, as well as she's being. This is showing that she's aware of others' emotion, so she's aware of that he can is blocked by this. And where self-awareness comes into is when she's stating how she's basically reviewing things that have happened to her life and how she views sounds now as just music, or she is kind of re-looking at her past. Moving on to physical abilities. Physical abilities is shown throughout this, whether it be the gunfights, the physical altercations that she has with the opponents. This is seen, I believe, with her stamina, her strength, as well as her ability to hear and visualize things. Because she doesn't look, like I said, she doesn't look at things anymore as just face value. She kind of sees and reads in between the lines. Let's go to the scene where this kind of shows.
Give me the case.
뭐야, 이 새끼들아. 저녁 죽여!
That's all I want to show for that scene right there. And like I said, this is going kind of above and beyond what the whole idea of abilities are for normal life. She is able to manipulate people's bodies by stopping them from moving, as well as basically letting them levitate and float into the air. But this is also shown throughout the firing scenes with where she has a weapon and she's making these precision shots, as well as she's able to have a quick and height sense of making quick decisions, whether it be like we saw with the driving the vehicles, as well as controlling her body, and later scenes making it her able to manipulate her own flesh into other forms. In summary, we went over kind of the biological factors, which it falls into the cognitive, and we've went into more depth on the cognitive, as well as the emotional and the physical abilities. This hopefully has made a little bit more clarification of the OB scene, as well as a little bit of Chapter 10. If there's any questions, please leave them in the bottom of the discussion board. Thank you very much.